your two Iowa teams left a mark on women's college basketball, but also women's basketball at large. Is that like kind of crazy to think about? Like you were a part of something that was a catalyst for this. Like
I had heard about this Caitlin Clark, and I was like watching videos of her just like having like 40 points, like averaging a million in high school. And I was like, oh, this girl thinks she's gonna come here and rule the world, you know, like whatever. It's gonna be, you know, whatever. And there she did, came in right away and ruled the world. And I was like, all right, here we go.
There was one phone call, one conversation, and it happened at the exact moment Kate Martin needed someone to tell her the truth. Not what was comfortable, not what sounded nice, but the actual truth about why things were falling apart in Las Vegas. The person on the other end of that line was Caitlin Clark, and what Caitlin told her in that conversation changed everything. Not just Kate's zip code, not just her jersey number, her entire career trajectory. Because what Caitlin understood, even while managing her own brutal first-year adjustment in Indiana, was something that people in Kate's corner in Las Vegas either could not see or were not willing to say out loud. Kate Martin was not failing. The system around her was failing her. That distinction is everything. And the story of how that phone call happened, what it meant, and where it led Kate next is the kind of thing you need to understand if you actually want to grasp what is happening beneath the surface in this league right now. If this kind of investigative storytelling is why you keep coming back, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps us keep digging into the stories that most channels are content to leave on the surface. We are going deep today. To understand how we even got to that phone call, you have to go back to Iowa, and not just the highlights, not just the tournament runs, but the real architecture of what Caitlin Clark and Kate Martin actually built together in those Carver Hawkeye Arena years. Before that era, Iowa women's basketball was not what you would call a must-watch national program. It had its moments, its tradition, but it was not the kind of place where college basketball fans across the country were rearranging their schedules to watch a regular season game. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and then Kate Martin arrived alongside her, and that equation changed permanently. Caitlin brought the fireworks, the Lobo threes, the moments that immediately went viral. She was the gravitational center of everything. But here is what gets missed in the highlight reel version of that Iowa story. A gravitational center only works when you have the right structure built around it. Kate was that structure. She averaged 13.1 points and nearly 7 rebounds per game across those final 4 runs. Those are not backup numbers. Those are not glue player numbers in the dismissive sense of that phrase. That is real production from someone who understood exactly what her role required and then exceeded it repeatedly under the biggest tournament pressure college basketball can generate. What made her genuinely rare was the combination. She did not need the spotlight to be effective. She understood intuitively when to crash a rebound off a Caitlin miss, when to set the screen that opened the driving lane, when to crash a rebound off a Caitlin miss, when to set the screen that opened the driving lane. The off-ball intelligence Kate brought was the kind of thing coaches spend entire careers trying to teach players and usually fail. And the bond between them ran deeper than basketball eke. Kate has talked about it as relationship equity, the idea that you cannot lead people effectively if the only time you are connecting with them is in a timeout huddle or during a film session. She built real relationships with her teammates outside the gym, including with Caitlin, and that investment created a level of trust that paid dividends constantly throughout those final 4 runs.
Remember, you have that summer before, and she was doing things that I had never seen anybody do before. And as a freshman, to come in and have that kind of confidence, like, not everybody has that. Like, I was like, oh, I haven't really seen anything like this. And so we knew she was going to be outstanding. And then, at the beginning of the year, we had some big wins, and there was highs and lows that year for sure. But, it took us a little bit to figure it out. But it obviously turned out better than I could have ever expected or thought.
The peak of that partnership came in a game most people still talk about in disbelief. The 2023 Final Four victory over undefeated South Carolina, a team with twin towers down low, length and athleticism everywhere, and one of the most respected coaching staffs in the country, was supposed to be a comfortable win for the Gamecocks. Iowa was not supposed to survive that, but they executed the game plan with a level of composure that programs spend decades trying to develop. Kate has called it the defining moment of her career. When you watch the film, you understand why. She was everywhere in that game, communicating on defense, boxing out, cutting off actions, setting screens. Every single winning detail. That was the player who entered the WNBA draft. That was the player the Las Vegas Aces selected. And what happened next is one of the more honest examples of how the professional system can take a real player and quietly erase her if the timing and the environment are wrong. The Aces did not draft Kate to develop her. Looking back now, it is clear she was drafted to provide professional depth behind a roster that was already settled. Veterans like a Ja Wilson and Chelsea Gray were going to dominate that rotation, and Becky Hammon, one of the sharpest tactical minds in the league, was not going to disrupt a proven championship formula to carve out development minutes for a rookie. That is not a criticism of Hammon. That is just the reality of what the Aces were in that moment, a team built to win now, not to build. The numbers document the slow collapse with uncomfortable precision. Early in the season, Kate was averaging around 20 minutes per game. That is a solid foundation for a rookie learning the pro speed. By September, that number had collapsed to 11.5. Her scoring dropped to 2.6. Her rebounding fell to 1.6. The player who was controlling boards and hitting shots in front of packed arenas at Iowa was being reduced to bench presence, visible enough to be there, invisible enough to be there, and then the playoffs arrived. 6 playoff games, 3 total minutes, 3. At that point, you are past the conversation about development curves and adjustment periods. 3 minutes across 6 playoff games is a decision. The Las Vegas Aces had looked at what Kate Martin offered and decided it did not fit into the minutes they were willing to invest. Full stop. Here is what you were noticing when you watched those Aces playoff runs, and something felt slightly off about the bench energy, about the rotation depth, about the spaces where a young player should have been earning trust. That was the quiet erasure of a player who deserved better circumstances than the one she landed in. Drop a comment below right now. Do you think the WNBA has a systemic problem with how veteran-heavy rosters handle young players? We are seeing more and more of this pattern across multiple teams, and we want to know what you are seeing from where you are watching. The WNBA's physical and intellectual demands are genuinely unlike anything a player experiences in college, even at the highest level. The speed compresses decision windows down to fractions of a second. The size and length of interior defenders makes the same layup that worked against a Big Ten defense into a contested nightmare. Players who averaged 20-plus points in March Madness have come into this league and needed 2 full seasons just to find their footing. The adjustment is real and it is universal, but Kate's situation in Vegas was never really about the adjustment. The adjustment was happening. She was getting sharper, understanding the speed, refining her reads. What was not happening was the opportunity to demonstrate any of that in real game situations. You cannot build WNBA confidence in practice minutes. You build it through live possessions against players who are trying just as hard to take those minutes back. Vegas was not giving her those possessions, and by the time the expansion draft arrived, everyone involved, Kate included, had already understood the reality of the situation. She was not going to be protected. That moment, that specific piece of information, is where the Caitlin Clark conversation becomes the center of this entire story. Because when Kate was processing what it meant to leave the only professional team she had ever known, she did what she had always done when things got cloudy. She reached out to the person she trusted most. She called Caitlin Clark.
Real quick, what did you notice about Caitlin's work ethic?
Yeah.
Was there anything that stood out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was in the gym constantly.
Yeah.
And it was the way she approached everything too was it was with a sort of excellence. It wasn't oh, I'm just gonna go through the motions and whatever. It was no, I'm here to kick your butt in every single drill, every single practice, and especially whenever our gray squad guys were playing against us, it was if you're across from me, you're my enemy, you know? And I think that's just kind of how you have to approach things to get better. And she had that, next level mindset, and it really just raised us all up.
What matters here is the context Caitlin was navigating on her own side of that call. Her rookie year in Indiana was not the smooth transition anyone outside the sport may have assumed. The speed was different, the physicality was real, the pressure of being treated as the face of an entire franchise, and arguably the face of the league's new commercial moment, arrived before she had even found her shooting rhythm at the professional level. Caitlin Clark was managing her own enormous adjustment while simultaneously becoming the most analyzed player in women's basketball history. And yet, the moment Kate explained what had happened in Vegas, Caitlin understood it immediately. Not just the facts, but the feeling behind them. The slow disappearance of minutes, the playoff bench experience that barely qualified as participation, the creeping doubt that maybe the problem was internal rather than structural. What Caitlin told her was direct. Real quick, if this channel has been your go-to source for the real story behind what happens in this league, consider joining as a member. Your support is what makes it possible for us to keep going this deep on stories like this one, and we genuinely appreciate every member who makes that investment. Here is where the story shifts from a personal narrative into something with broader implications for how the WNBA functions as a system. The expansion draft that introduced the Golden State Valkyries into the league created something genuinely rare in professional sports, an opportunity for players who had been buried in entrenched hierarchies to start fresh, somewhere that actually needed to build, not inherit, build. Vegas treated Kate as a depth piece, useful enough to keep around, not valuable enough to prioritize. Golden State did the opposite. The Valkyries selected her because they understood that building a culture from scratch requires people who already know how to operate within a winning one. Kate Martin spent 4 years at Iowa doing exactly that. She knows how championships are assembled from the inside. She knows what unselfish, high-EQ basketball looks like at scale. That institutional knowledge does not just appear on a stat line, but it shapes everything about how a young franchise develops its identity. Head coach Natalie McCarthy already knew what Kate could provide. She had watched it on film from the Vegas. In Golden State, the priorities are fundamentally different. Effort matters. Communication matters. Basketball intelligence matters. Mistakes are correctable. What is not correctable is the habit of drifting through the game without competing, and that has never been Kate's problem. The fan response in the Bay Area has validated the decision from day one. The Valkyries sold out their home schedule before the roster was even finalized. Chase Center, a venue that already had a championship culture built in from the Warriors' years, filled up with fans who stayed through a loss to Los Angeles and cheered from the first minute to the last. Kate has talked about what that means to a team that is still finding its identity, the knowledge that the crowd is invested regardless of the scoreboard. What of the crowd that is not something you take for granted when you spent a rookie season mostly warming a bench in a city where the Aces were already expected to win everything. Share this video with someone who follows Kate's story, because the next chapter is the one that is going to decide what her WNBA legacy actually looks like, and it is already underway. This is also the moment to examine what this situation reveals about the structural dynamics that affect every young player who enters the WNBA without a guaranteed star-level role. The collective bargaining reality of this league means roster spots are precious and veteran players have earned protections that make it genuinely difficult for young talent to break through in a compressed timeline. That is not inherently wrong. Experienced players deserve security. But the downstream effect is that a player like Kate Martin, skilled, versatile, culturally valuable, can enter the right organization at the wrong moment and watch her trajectory get distorted through no fault of her own. The Valkyries represent an interesting model for what an alternative looks like. An expansion franchise is not constrained by the same seniority calculus. Every player enters on something closer to equal footing, and the contribution that actually matters is the one that happens in the next game, not the reputation carried over from seasons past. Kate's role in Golden State is clearly defined: rebound with purpose, defend with effort, make the smart pass, hit the open shot. But more than the production, her job is to help build the habits and standards of a franchise that wants to compete for a championship within 5 years. The ownership has said it publicly. The expectation is set, and for the first time in her professional career, Kate Martin is part of an organization whose timeline includes her. Now connect that back to what Caitlin Clark actually did in that phone call. She did not just offer sympathy or generic encouragement. She gave Kate a framework for understanding her situation accurately. The environment had failed her, not the other way around, and that framework made leaving Vegas feel like a choice rather than a concession. The distinction is enormous. Players who leave situations feeling like they failed carry that weight into the next one. Players who leave understanding that the fit was wrong arrive somewhere new with their confidence intact. Kate Martin arrived at Golden State with her confidence intact, and you can see it in how she has talked about the franchise since day one, not with relief, but with genuine excitement about what they are building and her specific role inside it. Here is what this entire story points toward that nobody is saying loudly enough. The WNBA's next competitive frontier is not just about stars. It is about which organizations have figured out how to build cultures that develop the players around those stars. Las Vegas failed at that with Kate Martin. Golden State now has the opportunity to get it exactly right. If the Valkyries can turn Kate's presence, her leadership capacity, her Iowa-built winning habits, her deep knowledge of how championship basketball feels from the inside, into a genuine franchise cornerstone, they will have demonstrated something important about what expansion basketball can accomplish when it is done thoughtfully. And Caitlin Clark, operating 400 miles away in Indiana, will have quietly played a role in that franchise's development without ever appearing on their roster. That phone call did not just redirect one player. It may have seeded the culture of an entire organization. If this investigation opened your eyes to something the highlight, real version of this story always leaves out, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because we are tracking how this plays out in real time. Next video, we are looking at how the Valkyries' first full season is reshaping conversations about expansion teams and player development across the entire league. You do not want to miss where this goes next. This is not just Kate Martin's comeback story. It is the blueprint for how one honest conversation from the right person at the right moment can rewrite what a career looks like. We will see you there.